cap at a child in the photograph of an age where you can't tell if it's a boy or a girl. Same thing happens in the drawing. Whenever I ask audiences about this, it's split 50-50. Next slide, please. Working on a large triptych there on the right. That's not me on the left. See the substantial wing there at the Bird Museum. Next slide, please. In the Warsaw Ghetto, and a side photograph is used in two different drawings. We'll see one of them here. Called Old Man Praying. Next slide, please. This is baby Giedel. Giedel's aunt is a survivor of the Warsaw Ghetto, Majdanek, Auschwitz, slave labor, last year in the war at a factory in Malchow, Germany. Lives in a neighborhood of Seattle, and survived the war, as did one sister. Giedel, when Giedel and her mom and the aunt and Giedel's grandfather were still alive after the liquidation of the ghetto began. And Giedel was 5 or 6 years old at the time. The reason that the aunt, who I know, has photographs of all the families is she had an aunt who had moved to Seattle around 1928 or 29, had corresponded with all the family until the German occupation. Giedel was murdered at Majdanek. Giedel's mother then went in line to the gas. The sister, Hannah, was then later transported to Auschwitz. When she gets to Auschwitz, she found another sister who had been taken out of the ghetto during the roundups the year before in '42. Miraculously, both of those two sisters survived not only Auschwitz, but this death march to Malchow, Germany, and then they were the Red Cross, I think, in Sweden, and then because of the aunt in Seattle, that's how they ended up in the States. Next slide, please.
Right?
Sure.
Do any, if you have a wild imagination, if you look at that and not see the eye on the left side, are you able to see that, not see the eye on the left side? It looks almost like a lamb with her ear being the snout part of it. Did you see that?
Nope. I don't.
Oh, yeah.
To hear such a completely different interpretation fascinates me. Tell me where you're talking about.
This is really weird. Okay? Because this is shaded, I saw it like this. This is the eye of the lamb looking in this direction, and this is the snout. Yeah, you see that?
I saw a little
Somebody
bit.
give him a Rorschach.
You saw it.
I saw the other eye of the eye.
Eye of the lamb.
Because the eye on the left is kind of weird. That's because
Let's do that Turkish-style coffee or something.
But it's a meaningful interpretation, obviously.
I just thought it when I first looked at it.
Yeah. Perception. That's a good drawing.
Rubenstein, or any of you familiar with Rubenstein?
The pianist?
No, the comic, the ghetto comic.
The Mime.
Ah.
I found this in '93. I was in New York, went to Evo for an afternoon, was going through their old card catalog.
Your glasses checked. It was sharper before you started playing.
It went out of focus. No, it was sharp and then it just
Pops.
went out of focus.
Because it heats up and it pops.
Close your eyes, somebody. Tell me which way to go.
Other way.
The other way.
Look, Deepak. Look, good.
No. Not nearly, but we'll let it go. So going through this card catalog, was pre-computer then at Evo, and I saw this thing, Rubenstein, Let's, Warsaw Ghetto, and I had them pull the photograph from the vault. I was recognizing the other card catalog titles in the Warsaw Ghetto file just by the descriptions. And so I ordered a photo, and they mailed it to me a few months later, and then I wrote the chief archivist there, Marek Webb, who was born and raised in Poland. And I said, well, who is Rubenstein? What happened to him? And they said he was from the province of Szczytło in the province around Warsaw. was rounded up in the ghetto, was seen by witnesses on the day he reported to the Umschlagplatz. This would have been like August of 42, yelling his famous slogan, "Alle gleich." Now, have any of you seen the Polanski movie, The Pianist? So he's made, in that movie, he's made a composite of Rubinstein and what's his name, the head of the children's book author and head of the orphanage in the ghetto. Korshak, yeah, kind of melds him into one character. You see, the guy looks like Korshak, but he's yelling like Rubinstein in the movie.
What's Ali Gleich?
All are equal. And Webb wrote that he had been picked up and interrogated by the Gestapo and lost his reason after that. I can only wonder if he was picked up and interrogated by the Gestapo, because he was that much different. I've never seen any of the photographs of like a mine in a place like the Warsaw Ghetto. And he's wearing, this like Western shirt with snap pockets and a beret, shiny belt buckle, and tapered, black pants and shiny shoes. Incredible in the way that he was doing that in the streets of the ghetto. The circular things on the lower left, on the left there, under the wing, at viewer's left, were from what I call a pedicab, like a rickshaw type of thing. And I just there were people in the photograph, some men standing behind him in buildings or whatever. I just put that in there to kind of ground him to the sidewalk. Next slide, please. Also from a Warsaw Ghetto photo, I call it Child with Quilt, has kind of like stitching and so on with what I call like weeping ponies or dogs. Might get a better focus there.
Can somebody, I'm sorry, because guys, when I look like this perfectly focused, I look like it's out of focus. I don't know.
You do the change, I'll do the focus.
That's focus.
Is that focus? Is that focus?
Now it's not. It was better.
Is that focus? Come on, we're going crazy.
Okay, good, next slide. They get the idea.
That's a neat image.
It's very bad with the light.
It's Warsaw Ghetto photograph, also girl probably near death. Next slide, please.
Is the barbed wire in front of it?
No. This is I'm going to focus this though. This is the first life-size drawing I did in the series. Call it Girl in Rags in the Warsaw Ghetto. And it was too big. I didn't take it up to the Burke Museum. I ended up doing these kind of decorative wings based on wings from Birds in Flight from a book I got from the library. This is about, 80 inches high. Next slide, please.
What did you do with this collection?
Well, they're all in Seattle. Most of them are in storage right now. I have 5 works up at our Reform Temple in Bellevue by Mercer Island, and next exhibits aren't until next winter at 2 universities in Illinois and Missouri. So it's kind of open for travel. This is the beginning of the companion piece I did for this called Bar Mitzvah Age Boy in the Warsaw Ghetto. The boy on the left side of the photograph there, wearing this kind of multi-layered pastiche of jackets and what have you, schmatas, rags, roped on, the shoes, and so on. At the point where I did the photograph was taken, I had penciled in the whole thing, kind of as an outline, and I had just started inking in his face there, all in dots. Next slide, please. Kind of laborious pointillism with pen and ink. The drawing was about midway done. A couple of artists in the studio there, being silly, as you see. That upper level jacket was completely done. Every square made out of dozens or hundreds of dots, and kind of working way down in the drawing. Also pre-wings. Next slide, please. That's the completed drawing. My photographer was taking the photograph of I asked, a woman walked in his studio and I asked her to stand there just to give viewers a sense of scale who would be seeing the slide. She's about 5 feet, 5'1" or so. Next slide, please. Photographs taken by some soldier under General Stroop during the liquidation of the ghetto. Notice that on the far left side, the balconies on the left there. Next slide, please. Show up on the far left of the drawing. This is actually out of order chronologically in terms of how the series is done, but I placed it in terms of how the story of the time sequence of the Warsaw Ghetto. This is called Three Jews Jumping from Burning Buildings during the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. The photographs, I used 3 different photographs of people jumping from buildings, and the men upper left and right were very blurry in the photographs. And I assume they jumped out of buildings either because they didn't want to die in flame and fire, also controlling their own deaths. And you notice the wings of those two are also just decorative patterning. I didn't use birds' wings. The wing of the woman is defined entirely by negative shape. And in the photograph of her, she was very sharply delineated. Kerchief, long coat, ankle, whatever, calf-high boots. A few years after I did the drawing was done in 92. I saw a then recently published book on the history of the ghetto. It said that she had survived the jump, was captured by the soldiers and died at some concentration camp. Compositionally, this was a tough piece to me at the time, because I couldn't decide how much to draw in of the buildings in the background, the windows, the balconies, and all that. And eventually I decided that less is more, trying to evoke a mood, a feeling, people also being evaporated. And having a lot more white space kind of helped define the overall image. Next slide, please. I'm always touched by the photograph in the lower left, which is actually a kind of a detail of the one above it, the man and the woman there. The women on the right, Warsaw Ghetto fighters after capture. Next slide, please. And I titled the piece, Women Fighters After Capture During the Uprising Before Execution. The border, I eclectically was inspired by a ketubah, which is in a book on Chaim Shelf there, Jewish Art and Civilization. And I put the Hatikva is in there. So the ashes to rebirth sort of thing. I get a slightly better focus there for the tribe. We'll leave it. Next slide, please. The ghetto, after it was obliterated.
That's the church is still there, right?
Mm-hmm. Isn't that the church on the
That
main
is-
street?
Is that the ghetto or is that the like wider picture of Warsaw?
No, it's the ghetto.
You talking about the church that was on the main street, across the street from the Yiddish theater? Maybe?
Then the one with the notion, yeah, it might be.
The one where they smuggled the Jews out?
That might be. As opposed to the one on Hod Ha'sharon. Yeah.
Next slide, please. This is was not Halloween. It was just Seattle. It exhibited a shopping mall right in the heart of the city. Yeah. Next slide, please. This is the third, the photograph of the basis for the third life-size work in the series. Also, similar to the piece, the bar mitzvah age boy in the Warsaw Ghetto, this kind of layering of disintegrating garments. Also looking like, I've had people say this looks like every man. Someone you might see, you go into a coffee shop or bookstore. Next slide, please. This piece is from the late 90s. Called Young Man with Star of David Armband in the Warsaw Ghetto. And it was also a major, I guess I skipped a lot of some of the other color works that came after the first 20 or so of black and white works. But it's pen and ink and gouache. Gouache is a type of watercolor. And then I mounted it on masonite and built this frame around it and inlaid mosaic. Most of the imagery in on his torso, like down to the like where his feet are, was my color interpretation of photographs in the book Wooden Synagogues. Are any of you familiar with this book? Yes, it's an incredible book. Incredible photograph, whatever, all the synagogues that were burned down. The only exception to that, I found a book published around, I don't know, 1980 or so by a couple of American fellows who had gone to Eastern Europe, and there was a photo. They were going to where remnants of Jewish communities, and in some town in Hungary, there was this photograph of someone holding this like orthotic insert made out of a Torah scroll, and I thought that worked really well there compositionally.
You heard that also in the other Semitic.
And I assume they jumped out of buildings either because they didn't want to die in flame and fire, also controlling their own deaths. And you notice the wings of those two are also just decorative patterning. I didn't use birds' wings. The wing of the woman is defined entirely by negative shape. And in the photograph of her, she was very sharply delineated. Kerchief, long coat, ankle, whatever, calf-high boots. A few years after I did the drawing was done in 92. I saw a then recently published book on the history of the ghetto. It said that she had survived the jump, was captured by the soldiers and died at some concentration camp. Compositionally, this was a tough piece to me at the time, because I couldn't decide how much to draw in of the buildings in the background, the windows, the balconies, and all that. And eventually I decided that less is more. I'm trying to evoke a mood, a feeling, people also being evaporated. And having a lot more white space kind of helped define the overall image. Next slide, please. I'm always touched by the photograph in the lower left, which is actually a kind of a detail of the one above it, the man and the woman there. The women on the right, Warsaw Ghetto fighters after capture. Next slide, please. And I titled the piece, Women Fighters After Capture During the Uprising Before Execution. The border, I eclectically was inspired by a ketubah, which is in a book on Chaim's shelf there, Jewish Art and Civilization. And I put the Hatikva is in there. So the ashes to rebirth sort of thing. I got a slightly better focus there for the tribe. We'll leave it. Next slide, please. The ghetto, after it was obliterated.
That's the church is still there, right?
Mm-hmm. Isn't that the church on the
That
main
is-
street?
Is that the ghetto or is that the wider picture of Warsaw?
No, it's the ghetto.
You talking about the church that was on the main street, across the street from the Yiddish theater? Maybe?
Then you know, the one with the notion, yeah, it might be.
The one where they smuggled Jews out?
That might be. As opposed to the one on Hod Ha'sharon. Yeah.
Next slide, please. This is was not Halloween. It was just Seattle. It exhibited at a shopping mall right in the heart of the city. Yeah. Next slide, please. This is the third, the photograph, the basis for the third life-size work in the series. Also, similar to the piece, the bar mitzvah age boy in the Warsaw Ghetto, this kind of layering of disintegrating garments. Also looking like, I've had people say this looks like an everyman. Someone you might see, you go into a coffee shop or bookstore. Next slide, please. piece is from the late 90s. Called Young Man Would Starve David Armband in the Warsaw Ghetto, and it was also a major, I guess I skipped a lot of some of the other color works that came after the first 20 or so of black and white works. But it's pen and ink and gouache. Gouache is a type of watercolor. And then I mounted it on masonite and built this frame around it and inlaid mosaic. Most of the imagery in on his torso, like down to the like where his feet are, was my color interpretation of photographs in the book Wooden Synagogues. Are any of you familiar with this book? Yes, it's an incredible book. Incredible photograph, whatever, all the synagogues that were burned down. The only exception to that, I found a book published around, I don't know, 1980 or so by a couple of American fellows who had gone to Eastern Europe, and there was a photograph. They were going to where remnants of Jewish communities, and in some town in Hungary, there was this photograph of someone holding this like orthotic insert made out of a Torah scroll, and I thought that worked really well there compositionally.
You have that also in the other selecting.
That type of thing?
It is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh-huh. Next slide, please. And next slide. This is Elie Wiesel's maternal grandfather. When I was working on the drawing, someone who was visiting from New York came by my studio, and the wings weren't drawn yet, and he looked at it, and he said, "This looks like Everyone's Zadie." And then I ended up titling the piece after it was done, Everyone's Zadie, Portrait of pt2of5. It was the only piece I did in the series where I asked the Wings collection curators if they had something, a wing from the area around where the person I depicted was from. They didn't have anything from Hungary, Romania area. I ended up using the wing of a bird that flies from Soviet Central Asia, that region, to Africa, migrates over here. That was the bee eater on the left.
The communists let them do that?
What do you mean?
Migrate.
Yeah, I had to get special visas, yeah. Detour around Chechen and so on. This woman was a Parisian Jew. Her niece is a hidden child survivor who lived in my mom's apartment building for many years in West Palm Beach. To get a better focus there. Her name was Rachel Segan. She and her husband and the two children all perished. And I only drew her the other way. I'll get it. I think you need to see your optometrist. There we go. Next slide, please. And I didn't. This is her daughter. No, it isn't. Odette Segan. I decided not to draw her. The photograph of her is too precious to me. I didn't. The hand tinted was commonly done at the time. This is when my father was dying 10 years ago in a hospice in West Palm Beach, the art critic for the Palm Beach Post had done an article about my work, and we put the article up on the wall of my father's hospice room. One of the doctors, hospice doctors, turned out to be my age, child of survivors, and I asked her if her family had managed to save any photographs, and they had one photograph. A year later, her brother sent me this photograph, and there was this would be the doctor's grandmother, was the woman, the two aunts she didn't know, and there were 4 brothers in there, uncles she never knew. I've been drawing everyone in the series aside from the other daughter, who was the doctor's mom, who since passed away. And I've been drawing everyone in the photograph in different works in the series. They were from Ostrowicz. I'm not sure where it is in Poland. Also taken in the late 20s. Next slide, please. This is the husband and the youngest son. You notice the two candlesticks here with no candles in them. Also like a symbolic kind of representation here. Next slide, please. This is, works have been changing dramatically the last 5-6 years, 98 or so on. This is a Jewish woman who graduated the Academy of Fine Arts in Warsaw in painting, was a friend and correspondent of Bruno Schultz, the playwright and visual artist. Many of you familiar with Schultz? There was a big uproar a couple of years ago when Yad Vashem took out these wall panels that Schultz had painted under the command of a German officer in this town where Schultz was from. Anyway, next slide, please. We have a detail shot or two. It's called "No One Came to Save Anna Plotkier." The above her head is taken from Polish Jewish gravestones.
Yeah, you should know that, first of all, the letter on the right should be a P. You have it as a Chaf, should be Ponach.
But it's not Ponikva, it's Ponach?
Yes.
Oh.
And the hands are the Birkat Kohanim,
There's focus.
so they should be like this.
That's how they looked at the gravestone photographs they took them from. The portion of the center kind of obliterated, but I'll take that under consideration. I'm not going to change the work now, but thanks.
But by the way, just so you know, when
Yeah.
in the middle it slips out of focus, it's because the slide's doing it. I'm not touching
Yeah.
it.
This is the largest piece in the series. It's called Show a Dream. It's 4 by 8 feet. We've got Nussbaum, the German Jewish painter, on the kind of bottom center with the yellow Star of David there. My great grandmother from one of these photographs I got from my mother's cousin Batya here. Another brother of that family, the story about the hospice doctor and her grandmother and all the family that wiped out. Another brother here. Everyone else from the Warsaw Ghetto, with the exception of this child over here, whose photograph I had seen in the Holocaust Museum, U.S. Holocaust Museum's website, from Kielce. The child had posed for a photograph that the Judenrat was making like some sort of booklet for the Nazis. The child had this, it's like a scarf, but it was like made out of twine or rope or something. And I call it Child with Bird's Nest Scarf. Actually, there's a Czech child here. And Bruno Schultz over here. And that's the street at which he was executed by a German officer the same day they were liquidating the ghetto. And the town he was from, the name of which eludes me at the moment. This, next slide, please. The synagogue at the bottom center, close to the back, but that's from a town called Lesko. When I was in college, my Hillel rabbi at Southern Illinois University, Earl Vinicor, some of you may have seen this about Polish Jews, the final chapter. He, this was in 1975-76. He and a classmate of mine, a photographer, had gone to Poland. The book was published by McGraw-Hill in 77. It was really my first introduction to anything about Poland at the time. Next slide, please. Kind of hard to make out some of the detail areas there. The child from Kielce, my great-grandmother, on the left there. The elderly woman and the young woman there from Warsaw Ghetto photographs. The ring at the center right is from an Italian Jewish wedding ring from around the 17th century or so. Next slide, please. recent work. It's Leonie Ginsberg, who was a young Italian intellectual, anti-fascist activist, who was murdered at a prison in Rome, I think in '42. It's called Haggadah Ginsberg. There we go. And next slide, please. Taking on a very different look than the early works, black and white, singular types of images and so on. Those are kind of heads with hats and caps and whatever up there. Next slide, please. This is Erwin Schulhoff, who is a German-speaking Czech Jewish composer who quite posthumously is achieving a lot of acclaim now in Europe and the States with his all sorts of symphonies and what have you. Died at a labor camp in Germany. Next slide, please. Detail from the work. This is a Protestant German student named Sophie Scholl. She and her brother Hans were in a small group of university students and one or two faculty members at the University of Munich who leafleted the university, and several of them were beheaded by the Nazis. I picked up a children's book on her a couple of years ago. Yeah, they were guillotined. There was a common punishment for those facing capital charges, like domestic political prisoners, German, Austrian, whatever. They were guillotined. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a Christian theologian who was involved in church anti-Nazi resistance. What there was also, I think, beheaded. Maybe he was shot, I forget. The guillotine was actually used until fairly recently. The French only stopped using it in the 1960s. Anyway, when I read this children's book, I couldn't understand what the story was with the Scholl brother and sister and this activism. Like they knew that they would likely meet their demise. And then I read another book, an adult book on letters and correspondence of the brother and sister. And they got a bit of a greater inkling. They didn't want to, I thought to myself at first, why didn't they decide to try to survive the war so they could help rebuild Germany? They knew that the Germans were going to lose the war eventually. But evidently it sounded as if they decided that they didn't want the world to know after the war that